Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. I hope all is well with each and every one of you, and that you are doing your level best to make it through these unprecedented times. It's easy to get depressed and ask yourself, will it ever be normal again? It's been a strange and a very long year, and we still have 5 months to go. We need something to lift our spirits. Sports is normally our great diversion, life's candy store, but we've been without that for the better part of this year. PGA and NASCAR got things going a couple of weeks ago, and this week Major League Baseball was back with a few tune-up games, and the abbreviated season starts this weekend. So things are looking up, we hope. The question of whether we will have a college football season still seems to be very much up in the air. With numbers spiking all over the country, it makes you wonder if it can happen. My guest today says he thinks we will have a season. Joining me next on our Game Day segment is the longtime editor of the Wolverine Magazine, John Borton, here on the Meeechigan Man, so stay with us. Here with us on our Game Day segment this week is senior editor John Borton from the Wolverine Magazine. It's been a while, John. I hope all is well, but it's great to have you back with us.
Well, it's good to be back, Mike. It's good to be still talking about the possibility of sports this fall, despite everything that we've gone through lately. And I know it's a strange time, but one that has still some hopefulness to it.
Yes, and we're all looking for those little signs of hope. One of those, a sign usually every year that football season is right around the corner, is the day we get that beautiful Wolverine Preview magazine. Now, I don't have mine yet. I run to the mailbox every day and check, but I haven't gotten it yet, John. For those who might not be subscribers, is it too late to subscribe and get a copy of that?
No, it's not too late. You can go to our website, thewolverine.com, and there are ways to subscribe. You can look that up. Folks can also call our home office at 800-421-7751. That'll get you Coleman Publishing, and they'll be able to hook you up with the single copy or an overall subscription, which would of course include the 160-page football preview issue. So a lot in there. It's jam-packed with all kinds of features on the present team, historical feature on the 1918 season that involved some delays and canceled games and everything else, just like they're concerned about here. And just a trove of information. I always love the fact that the great John Falk once told me, "Hey, I keep that right beside my couch in front of my TV so I can have it for a reference." Always appreciated that from Michigan's iconic equipment man, and I know people will appreciate it. Several people have reported it has arrived at their doorstep, and I hope you get yours sooner rather than later.
Oh, I hope so too, and we'll get the information in our show notes so folks that maybe aren't subscribers to the Wolverine can give Coleman Publishing a ring. But as we look forward to that, unless something changes, John, in the next few days, camp opens for Meeechigan football. I think on Friday, isn't it?
It is on Friday, absolutely, the start of football practice, and it's very different this year, obviously, but I think people are almost holding their breath. Okay, are we going to make it to that stage? That will be a good sign. I think that they are very serious and very intent in going forward. And they're serious about it, but there's so many things that have intervened or could intervene, from local government to the NCAA overall to just what's happening with the flare-ups in different venues around college football, some including Ohio State having to stop workouts because they've had flare-ups. Michigan's done very well with its protocols and keeping people safe. But now here's the next big step, and starting workouts together and practice. Obviously, a phased-in sort of practice where they're going to not jump right in full pads or anything like that. But very interesting, and we've yet to hear the details of the conference-only season, which I think everybody's waiting to hear about.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've all been watching very closely as voluntary workouts started a few weeks ago, and that testing process, which is going to be so important moving forward. To date, 485 tests have been given to the student athletes, only 8 positives, 150 tests administered to staff members, 0 positives there. That, at least, very encouraging news, John.
Yeah, I think it is. And I've maintained all along that I think through common sense and through the thoroughness of your testing program, you can have a safe run here. You're talking about, first of all, you're talking about 18 to 22, 23-year-olds. And that age group, as we know, is almost a negligible amount of people that have any serious consequences from this. People say, well, yes, right, but that they're not the only people involved. What about referees? What about game officials?
Mm-hmm.
What about coaches, older coaches? Maintained, and I still maintain. Look, you can keep them safe. If you don't want Don Brown, Michigan's defensive coordinator, on the field for a season, you can have him in the booth. You can have him not in as close contact with players. You can do different things like that. And as you mentioned, Michigan with very good results back so far. You have to continue to hope for that. Quarantine as individuals encounter this, and hopefully keep moving forward.
Well, as we said, practice, a limited version of practice, begins on Friday for a couple of weeks. If all goes well, on August 6th, full camp opens. So before the first game, and really whenever that is, we should get roughly 6 weeks of practice time in. And I know that doesn't make up for missing spring football, but it really should be plenty of time. Everybody's on the same schedule as far as getting ready for the season, John.
Yes, that is correct. I will say it puts more of an emphasis on a high level of performance early in some quarters. Just imagine, for instance, Mike, if you're Joe Milton, you're challenging for the starting quarterback job. You know that Dylan McCaffrey has been on the field more. He has had more chance to demonstrate what he can do. You were looking forward to having spring ball and 15 days to set it in people's minds. Hey, watch out. This is a very serious challenger. And then you don't have that, and then you don't have the summer workouts together, again, because of COVID. And all of a sudden, it's past the middle of July, and you're starting camp, and you don't want to have a slow start. You want to be able to show right away, okay, it's on, this competition and all those sorts of things. And that's not the only position. That's just an example. But guys that were hoping to prove themselves in the spring now feel an extra urgency to, okay, let's really start out these late summer workouts at a high level.
Well, fans, coaches, players, really, everyone that loves college football, we've been on a roller coaster ride. But the reality is, even though we're optimistic on a lot of things, we're going day by day, week by week. We still aren't sure if and when we're going to have a season, really, are we?
There's no question about that. Certainly, a lot of things could happen. We're hearing all kinds of positive things on developments of vaccines and on treatments and different aspects of this. But on the other hand, you hear, you look, and you see cases are up, and there's flare-ups here and there, and this group or that group, as I mentioned, had to shut down their workouts. So we just don't know. We still don't know. We still don't know if they could actually start a season and find that they have to curtail it. And again, these are, as Ward Manuel has said, these are decisions that the individuals have to make. They're not going to force anybody into playing football or any other sport, and they are also not going to punish people if they decide to sit out. I mean, the latest that we heard that I found very interesting is that Chris Hinton, you talk about guys that are on the verge of the year that could really open things up for them and make them take them to the next level of performance and involvement. He and his parents are in the decision-making process about whether or not he's going to play this year, unless they get more assurance from the NCAA that things are going to be as safe as they want them to be. I mean, they've been very pleased and have said in printed reports with Michigan and everything that Michigan has done, the protocols, all the things to keep people safe. But they're still looking for maybe a greater assurance from the NCAA as an overreaching authority in these cases with regard to how teams are going to interact and how things are going to be on a game-to-game basis. So there's an example of someone who could be just a huge impact for the Wolverines this year. You know that they need the defensive tackles up the middle. Well, if all of a sudden one of your most promising ones, a former 5-star prep player, decides, and in conjunction with his parents, no, I got to sit this one out, that could be a huge change. And he's certainly not an isolated example.
Well, who makes the decision on when or if there is a season? It's kind of muddy to many of us. I get the question emailed daily, do I know? And I don't. But as Ward Manuel said when he communicated with season ticket holders last week, the decision is not in the hands of athletic directors or even university presidents, is it?
No, not really. I mean, you've got the NCAA certainly has a say, and they could step in, but you're also dealing with health officials and government officials. I mean, for instance, if the state of Michigan and the officials there, right up to the governor, decide that that's not happening in this state, you just knocked out 2 of the 14 Big Ten teams. So I know that they've been working behind the scenes in conjunction with the governor and with health officials and everyone working together to try and make this come about. But it's not as simple as President Schlissel and Ward Manuel stepping to the mic and saying, hey, Michigan football's back. We're going to move forward and do this. You're absolutely right. There are other voices to be heard.
Well, the Big Ten was the first of the Power 5 schools to announce a 10-game conference-only schedule. And, I think all things considered, I like it. How about you?
I do like it. I mean, there are things that I regret about it. If you were in a normal world, I will just mostly because that I had made a road trip to Washington before. And that was perhaps the most beautiful setting I have seen in a road venue, and I was really looking forward to doing that again. I know that Michigan fans were. That was one that was circled on the calendar. So there's that. Oh, what if? But when you get past that, you have to get past that pretty quickly. You understand that, okay, 10 Big Ten games would be a very neat test of you want to see these conference rivalries, and you want to see the conference opponents. Let's play it out and see who's standing at the end. I don't know what they will do beyond that, and that has not been made clear yet either as a conference championship game. Playoffs, whatever might happen beyond that, we'll have to see in various venues. But I do like the idea of it. And I think the wisdom of it involves keeping it relatively regional. I mean, that's a stretch when you you're going all the way from New York to Minnesota, but it's different than flying across the country to Washington and all those sorts of things. So, I can see the wisdom in it, and I really, really hope it happens. And I know that I have a lot of company in that regard.
No, absolutely. And given the way the year has gone with COVID-19, I think most of us will be very happy to see a 10-game season. Do we have any information or a time frame on when that schedule is going to be released?
Well, that's the biggest thing that everybody's waiting for, because at one point, you heard, okay, they're going to start late and shorten the schedule and try to be done by November 1st to let people have more break time, and recover. Lately, I have heard that it might be more of a situation where you start right around Labor Day as usual, and then have more breaks, more bye weeks. I think Urban Meyer was the one that tossed that one out. Is that you play 3 games and then have a bye week to be able to sort of reconnoiter and see where you're at and get guys healthy that might not be. So that we don't know. Hopefully within the next week or so, we will be hearing exactly what the schedule is and have a better idea of how they have ultimately fallen in putting this thing together. But I know that's something that I'm very much looking forward to doing, and anybody that even hopes to get to any of these games. I think we're going to see vastly reduced crowds, but for those that are trying to plan and hoping to get in the building for one of these games, they're going to want to know what weekends upon which they'll fall.
It really is, as I mentioned, flying by the seat of our pants this year.
Yeah, no question about it. And folks, just Ward has already said it's going to be a different year, and you have to understand that. Mm-hmm. Those who may be fortunate enough to get in the building for one of the more coveted games, they'll be very happy with that. I think other people will understand that you can only do so much, and there may be some relieved and decide that, hey, I can enjoy this and sit at home and watch these games play out. But there's certainly, you look at Michigan's schedule and you understand that you're on the road for 2 of the biggest rivalry games in Michigan State and Ohio State, but you're still bringing Penn State into the building and Wisconsin, and you really got some heavy hitters that were at the very front of the schedule, or would be the front of the Big Ten schedule. I don't know if that will be impacted at all, whether they'll keep generally the structure of the schedule and work things out, or how much that might get jumbled up. But again, it's wait and see and roll with what you get.
Here with us on our Game Day segment this week, senior editor John Borton from the Wolverine Magazine. And as we mentioned at the top of the show, John, the great Wolverine preseason magazine is out, and we're beginning to focus on some of the storylines surrounding Michigan football this year. The number one storyline is easy: keeping players and staff healthy. There will be nothing more important than that, will there?
There's no question about that. And, I referenced that 1918 story that I did for the magazine, and what a crazy parallel there. You had World War I winding down. You had the Spanish flu. You had the first ever Michigan-Ohio State game that was played at the end of the season, but not because that's the original schedule. The game was supposed to be played in October, and it got bumped back, and you had, concerns that were very much overriding the outcome of any football game, and that's kind of what you're looking at going into this fall. It's you have to keep people safe to the degree that you can, understanding that again, this is the group that plays college football is one of the, if not the least vulnerable groups to this disease, or this virus, and yet they're not the only ones involved. I think it's going to take special sort of discipline. There's always a high level of discipline involved in college football. But this is one of these deals where, okay, if I want to have a season, I need an extra level of discipline in controlling the socializing that I do and watching what I do in my off hours, calling grandma and grandpa rather than trying to visit them because of the distancing that you need and the fact that you've been exposed in some ways. So it's a very, very different sort of year all around. But that's absolutely the number one storyline. But you go from there to, okay, if they do all these things and if it happens, then you start thinking in football terms. Who's going to be the quarterback? How is this offensive line going to shake out because you lost 80% of the starters from last year? How do you build on the experience that the running backs got? Now you've got somebody on the defensive side like Kwity Paye being named the number one freak athlete out there, and Aiden Hutchinson on the other end is very, very good. How are they all going to play together and plug the holes that were created by the guys that were lost? And you almost get back into a more natural feeling of talking about the actual team itself as opposed to, is there going to be football? That's tenuous. We know that. But it's still something that I think Michigan fans are ready to try and embrace as some sense of normality as fall approaches.
We're all very aware that we're going to be keeping track of the numbers and safety of the players. That's going to be job number one. And then we can start focusing, as you said, on football things. And we mentioned the offensive line, abundance of talent there, a lot of new faces. And we sort of touched on the quarterback competition earlier, but usually this time of the year, and given that we have two very young quarterbacks, that would be what would be burning up our emails and conversations in sports radio about who is going to be the starting quarterback for Michigan. And that is going to be interesting to watch, isn't it?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And I'm of the opinion, and the people that I've talked to tend to lean towards Dylan McCaffrey in this instance, but for one of the big reasons being that you didn't have spring ball. You have a guy that's been on the field more proven. That does not rule out the fact that Joe Milton could really put on a show in these fall practices, these late summer practices, and make sure that everyone knows he could be the guy to run this team. The other thing about it is Dylan McCaffrey in the last two seasons has come up with a pretty significant injury each year, one with a broken collarbone, and of course last year with the concussion on an extremely cheap hit up at Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I think Dylan McCaffrey has to learn to hit the turf just a little bit sooner, and I'm sure that that's being stressed to him. But you wonder, I mean, you could have a situation where Dylan McCaffrey wins the job, and Joe Milton, his job at that point would be to remember the fact that he's one play away from being in that game and running the show. And so I think it'll be very intriguing. I think I've talked to other people that say, look out for Joe Milton. Do not undersell him. He's a physical freak. He can throw the ball right out of the stadium. Watch out if he pulls it all together and puts the touch on the ball that is necessary. It's just going to be as always, a fun position to watch in any year where you've lost a starter that has been there for 1, 2, 3 years, because the total changeover, and a different feel.
Another storyline is the backfield. We probably have more talent and depth than we've had in a long time, don't we, John?
Crazy. You went from last year and, okay, cool, wow, Karan Higdon is gone, and you got all rookies. Who's going to Chris Evans is gone because of a suspension. What are you going to do? And then, of course, we saw it play out as Zach Charbonnet and Hassan Haskins stepped into the void and combined for 1,300 and some yards and did a very nice job in there. Now you look at the fact that, okay, they've been on the field. They know what they're doing. They showed some talent and ability in there, and now more is expected of them. All of a sudden you get Chris Evans back as somebody that has accounted for, I think it's like 1,700 yards rushing and can catch the ball probably better than anybody else among those backs. And so you've got basically three starters for one spot, which has them even talking about playing Haskins and Charbonnet together at times, with Haskins filling more of a fullback type role in some looks. Very, very different feeling, and very you think that, okay, they're going to be extremely good there. But as my longtime friend Jerry Hanlon likes to say, Michigan's iconic former offensive line coach, those guys will be just as good as the offensive line and no better, because understanding you got to have the holes to get through. And so we're going to look at that whole offensive line and how that pieces together.
Getting the secondary squared away also, I think, a high priority. Again, no shortage of talent back there, is there, John?
There's no shortage of talent. You wonder, some people wonder, what about that other cornerback? You've got Lavert Hill that did such a lockdown job. But I think along the way, a guy like Vincent Gray has really shown at times that he can cover, and he's gotten the time on the field. He's played in the big games, ready to step up opposite of Ambry Thomas and do some things. And there's such a demand on those guys in Don Brown's system to lock people down and to be able to play that man-to-man, tough man-to-man that is demanded. But then you add a guy like Daxton Hill into the mix. Mm-hmm. And this is a guy that had an impact last year. I mean, caught a pass to move the chains on a fake punt play, but also demonstrated that as a defender, he has the sort of quickness and speed that we heard all about during the recruiting process, but also kind of played out, and it proved itself as in his true freshman year. I think you're going to see a lot of him at one of those safety spots, and anxious to see what he does along with the other veterans back there.
Well, as we are all well aware, nothing has been normal this year, and when the season begins, and I'm being optimistic, we know it's going to be a very different one in a lot of ways, but expectations will not change. Shortened season or not, it is still a huge year for Jim Harbaugh and Michigan football, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, look at, even if you just say, okay, 10-game Big Ten schedule, what all is involved there? Can you got beat up by Wisconsin a year ago up there, but you've held your own against that same program at home. Do you do that? Do you turn it back around against Penn State, which has been a whoever's home wins type of series? Michigan State, Michigan, and Jim Harbaugh have regained control of that series. Do they then go up there and put a real stamp on it, taking a fourth win in 6 seasons and kind of getting back to that every 2 out of 3 that you maintained for many, many years, and that produced a lot of animosity up in East Lansing for the Michigan program. And then perhaps the biggest test, the biggest story of them all, can you break through against Ohio State, which is that's the elephant in the room, let's face it. I mean, everything that Michigan wants to do under Jim Harbaugh, all the things that they set as their highest goals, get to that Big Ten championship game, win the Big Ten championship game, make the playoffs, those, in my mind, are all dependent on being able to beat the Buckeyes. And you've got that one, which could be in a bizarre setting with maybe 20,000 fans in Ohio Stadium, as opposed to 100,000 screaming and hateful fans overseeing the proceedings. So, yeah, there's no shortage of compelling aspects to a season, whether or not there are non-conference games or anything else. I mean, you've got a lot that Jim Harbaugh has done with this program already in getting it turned around from the years that preceded him, but everybody's looking for that next step.
Well, final question for you, John. If the season goes off as planned, it's going to be missing a lot of the elements that make us love college football, most notably sold-out stadiums or fans, and I'm sure TV revenue will not be what it was, revenue, period. But in some ways, John, this might be one of the most important college football seasons in the history of the sport. Do you think that's overstating it?
Well, I don't know as it is. I mean, it's a season that could completely go away, and the first time you haven't had college football in, forever.
Yeah.
Well over a century. And all of a sudden, it's in danger, but if you can make it happen in some fashion, I think that is very, very big, and would bring a smile to an awful lot of faces, including millions of Michigan fans that are out there that want to be able to tune in, that want to watch those winged helmets come out and get the job done, whether or not they're sitting in the stands, whether they're home, whatever it might be. Yeah, I agree. This is a big season if you can make it happen.
Here with us on our Game Day segment today has been senior editor John Borton from the Wolverine. As always, John, we appreciate your time, and I hope the next time we get together to chat, it's about what's happening in the season, who Michigan's next opponent is. So until then, you take care of yourself, enjoy what's left of summer, and we look forward to that next visit.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, I hope we're talking about things that are happening and games that are played out.
Thanks again to Wolverine Magazine editor John Borton for joining us today. If you are not a subscriber, I highly recommend you check them out. Simply the best coverage of our Wolverines, and they have been for a long time. And as you heard John and I mention, the huge Meeechigan Preview magazine is hot off the press. If you are a Wolverine fan, and I know you are, you will absolutely love it. If you subscribe now, there is still time to get a copy of that great big preview magazine. It is chock full of so much information you will not believe it. Just call Coleman Publishing at 800-421-7751. That's 800-421-7751. Make sure you tell them the Meeechigan Man sent you. In the next week or two, we should know a lot more about what's happening with college football. Camp starts Friday for us, and I'm guessing the Big Ten will release the 10-game schedule very soon. With mask mandates in place in most states now, let's hope those numbers start going the other way, and we keep our athletes healthy once fall practice starts. I'm getting excited. I know you are, and heaven knows we need a Meeechigan football fix. We need a college football fix, so let's stay positive. So the next time we meet, I hope it's to begin previewing a new season. We plan to be back on our weekly schedule as of August 5th. If anything changes, I'll let you know, but mark August 5th on your calendar. So stay healthy and enjoy as much of this crazy summer as you can. Thanks for joining me, and don't forget to tell your Maize and Blue family and friends about the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. Until next time, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!